This is going to sound like so much hate, and I swear it's not. Welcome to the Warner Brothas Podcast. I'm Kyle, joined by my brother Keenan, as always. Joined by Tim. Tim, what's up? Keenan, how you doing? What's up, fellas?
Great. It's a great time of year. I mean, we got basketball going on, of course. We got Aaron Judge finally understanding what baseball is in the postseason. That's great. And then we've got this NFL tiers list, which I couldn't be more excited for, that we're going to get to today. Sorry to foreshadow it, but Timmy, how are you?
Doing good. Not a baseball fan, but we have officially hit that Venn diagram of the ball sports all coming together. Baseball, football, NBA, all here.
True story.
The LaMelo ball sports.
Yep.
True story. I mean, this was supposed to be like the series for the MLB for the first time in, you could say, decades. I mean, you know, the Cubs World Series was important, but this is really the one since maybe even the Red Sox, this is my fucking city World Series, because there seemed to be a following for that. That seemed to be like a good moment for the sport. I think that was 2013. Ratings wise, 17, where the Red Sox was high. I did this for like a homework assignment the other day, actually, where I was looking and doing kind of like a beat report on the ratings of this. The Cubs won, obviously, because it was, I believe, 108 years without a championship. So like that was obviously massive. The Red Sox won there, and then Astros Dodgers, I think it was Astros Dodgers or Astros Rangers was another big one. But otherwise, ratings wise, has been bad. Last year's ratings were the worst of all time for viewership and ratings just itself. So yeah, this was supposed to. I mean, some of those
bring it back,
like the Astros Rangers. Like, I'm sure that was big because it was the Texas market, and you know, Texas is a huge market anyway, especially Houston, especially Dallas. And that's like mainly where their fan bases are. Right. But like nationally, though, they didn't resonate. Like the last one I really remember resonating, aside from the Cubs, would be that Sox one in 13. I guess a 17 one, which somehow I don't even remember.
The 17 one, that was like one of the best Red Sox teams, because I think they won 108 games and they just coasted. They were really good.
That was like their last season, or one of their last seasons with Mookie. But I do remember that. They like went wire to wire. They were like an all-time great team.
I was going to say Chris Sale was dealing all season long. But, you know, you're right. This is the 12th time the Dodgers and Yankees have faced, the first time, I think, since 81. And, like, this is the premier. These are the two of the four premier franchises in all of baseball going after it. You've got Ohtani and Judge, the two biggest stars in all of baseball, too. So it's like, what else can you ask for? And the series has been good, because don't get me wrong, when you went on a grand slam in extra innings in game one.
That was a classic moment. Game one was for sure a classic.
I was going to say game one's a classic. 2 and 3. I mean, Freddie Freeman's hit a home run in 6 straight games. So like that's all time, because no one's ever done that before. But game one was great. Game 2 and 3 were okay. Game 4 was good that the Yankees are getting back to it, but this will be a memorable series if the Yankees can bring it to 7, because then it'll be, okay, 3-1 comeback. We get to a game 7. Let's see if Ohtani can actually wake up, because Ohtani and Judge have been kind of plain.
Well, they dodged 2 bullets. Ohtani got injured, and it looked like he separated his shoulder, which he did not. So he's at least got an excuse. Judge has been pretty pedestrian, and that's saying it nicely, the entire postseason.
That was weird until we said that at the same time, but pedestrian.
But they dodged a bullet with Ohtani not getting injured for the entire series, and they dodged a bullet with the Yankees not getting swept last night. Looks like they're in position to not get swept tonight, but we'll see. It's a long game. 4-0 right now, and I believe the 3rd inning.
Yeah, top 3.
Top 3rd inning. So a lot of game left. By the time we get off this podcast, we'll probably be, you know, down the stretch here. It's probably inning 7, 8, or 9. So, yeah. I mean, I'm hoping for it to go back to LA. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dodgers come back. But hopefully for baseball fans, for the sport, for the league, hopefully they can at least get it to 6. Then you'll at least get ratings for sure.
in game 6. And then, ultimately, if it gets to a game 7, I don't believe that to be the case, but I think I at least get to 6.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It can definitely get to 6. I mean, especially with them being up 4-0 right now. But we buried the lead. We know what the show is about. This is week 8 going into week 9 of the NFL season. So we know what's going on. I'm going to be doing my quarterback list next week because we wanted to make sure we gave the proper time for Kyle to go through all 32 NFL teams right now. Kyle, take it away.
Yes, so last time it was like a 2-hour show of tiers that we did, and we're going to try to condense it for you. I sent both of y'all my last tiers list so we could kind of compare and contrast from about a month ago, which is crazy because it seems like it's been honestly like 2 weeks since we did the tier list, but it's been a full month.
Yeah.
We are basically dead center in the season, basically halfway. Used to be exactly halfway when there was 16 weeks. Obviously now there's 17 games, 18 weeks. And here we are.
Halfway through the games.
Halfway through the games,
halfway point.
Roughly halfway. Let's get this out of the way, okay? Chiefs are in their own tier. They're going for a 3-peat. Even if they were, let's say, 4-2, 5-2, right? At the top of their division, I would have them in their own tier. If they were around 500, maybe I'd put them in a different tier. But as long as they're atop of the division, they happen to be 7-0, right? They're 7-0.
Yep.
So they are clearly in their own tier.
Arguably the best defense in the league right now with the way they're playing.
For sure. And if you followed along with the Warner Brothas Podcast this season, you would know I don't necessarily think they're the best team in the league, but them being 7-0 and them being on a quest for a 3-peat, they got to be in their own tier. You can't really judge them against anyone else, regardless of how they look in their games. That will be.
So a quick question for you. Are we working bottom to top again? And
yes.
I know you just said, and I think you were just getting the Chiefs out of the way because they're the Chiefs.
Yes.
Do you want their title just to be the Chiefs again? Is that just like they're just the Chiefs?
I got them in the 3-peat category. I got them in the 3-peat category. As you see, I shared like I said, the 4 or 5 weeks 4 and 5 one in the group chat. It's just quest for a 3-peat. They can call whatever you want. Chiefs by themselves, 3-peat, whatever. Season's over.
That Lil Wayne Carter 3.
Right, yeah, the intro.
Yes, sir.
So, for the season's over tier in weeks 4 and 5, I had the Pats, I had the Titans, and I had the Panthers. Correct?
Yep. Yes, you did.
I added to this tier, and we'll get to the teams I did not add, but I added to this tier both the Las Vegas Raiders and, sorry, Tim, and the New York Giants. Also, sorry, Tim. Those are the 2 teams I added, partly because of the rest of the division, not necessarily the teams themselves. In the Raiders case, yes, the team themselves. The Giants actually don't think are a terrible team, really. I think they're average. I think they're mid-tier. But because of the division, I don't really see them gaining too much ground.
Their season's over.
Right, right. And who knows, maybe 4 weeks from now, they got a couple more. I mean, you never know in the NFL. But as of right now, Raiders and Giants, I added to it. There's a few more teams I could have added in the next tier right here. It's called the last legs. I think these teams are on their absolute last legs. If I were to do a tier next week after this Sunday's games and all these teams lose, they would absolutely be in the season's over tier. And you could argue they should be right now in the season's over tier. I'll name them right now. I got the Miami Dolphins. I got the Cleveland Browns. I got the New York Jets, who we will be talking about very soon. I got the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I got the New Orleans Saints. And I would say the 2 teams, all those teams, you could make a strong case that their season's over. I would say the one team that very much sticks out to me that I should, even I'm saying this, that I probably should have in season's over is the Saints. They might get back Derek Carr this week, so they could gain some ground. You couple that with the Bucs and all the injuries they're having, they could gain some ground. That's the only reason I have them on their last leg. So if the Saints lose this weekend, season's over. If the Jags lose this weekend,
get them out of there.
Season's over. The Jets, the Browns. Jets we got tomorrow. Browns and Dolphins. they all lose this Sunday. To me, season's over. Any objections? Anybody you think absolutely should be in season's over right now? Like
Jets.
I said, you could absolutely.
The Jets season's over.
Jets,
New York
Jets.
season's over.
We'll talk about them.
Get them out of there.
We will talk about them at the end of the show.
New York Jets season's over.
We will talk about them at the end of the show. Let's talk about them right now, actually.
Season's over. I'm sorry. Like, I'm going to just quickly talk about it. They went out there and they got Devontae Adams because they felt they needed a rapport there. And the rapport didn't really matter because the receiving room really wasn't the problem. Allen Lazard was playing fine. He didn't have the greatest rapport with Garrett Wilson. Tyler Conklin was playing just fine. Mike Williams was the scapegoat for games. He didn't run the right route here. He missed here, even though Aaron Rodgers missed a pass, but whatever. The receiver room wasn't bad, but they got Devontae fine. Didn't work out the first game. They got hosed. And I'm sorry, not hosed. They got blasted by the Pittsburgh Steelers 37-15, I believe. Then the next week, it's like, okay, we'll bring back Hassan Reddick. Finally, he got the contract thing. And they get beat by a Ramondre Stevenson run at the goal line. They're done. They're the same record as the Patriots. They're done. They're not coming back. Get them out of there. But otherwise, I'm actually not mad. The Saints could be there, but I get your logic. The Jags could be there, but I get your logic. The Browns, I actually like that you have them there because Jameis gives them an interesting little wrinkle to them, so I actually like them better with Jameis than Deshaun Watson. And then the Dolphins, now that they have Tua back, actually have a legitimate shot because that 7th seed, when you break it down, that 7th seed's probably looking 9-8. So I think the Dolphins have a chance to get to 9-8. But Timmy, I'll let you go.
The smallest of chances, by the way. These are all teams.
Listen, they're on their last leg, and I agree they're on their and they're in the last leg tier for a reason. So like I agree, things need to break right for them on both aspects of people losing and them winning. So I agree 100%.
Tim repping C4 Energy, by the way. I like it. C4 swag.
And I'm tired. I should honestly go purchase one. Get these yawns out of here.
When you're tired, you need to get a C4 Energy
today. I totally agree. I think the Jets should be in the season's over tier just because if I'm picking either the Jets or Dolphins to make it to that 9-8, and that's saying 9-8 is going to make it into the playoffs. I don't even know if that's the case, but if it does, I think I'm taking the Dolphins. But not positive. I mean, it could go either way. But either way, I think both their seasons are pretty much over. It would take a lot to run the table here. I think you can 100% put the Saints in seasons over here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're much different than the Giants. I really don't. I think they're both, 2-win teams that don't really have a future here. So the only team that I know for sure I would put in seasons over is the Saints, but I think you can argue the other two there. And then obviously the Jaguars, but their season was over week 1. So
For sure.
Their season was over before week 1.
For sure.
So
I just want to say about the Jags, about a few of these teams, really. It's predicated on the teams ahead of them in their division. Maybe like in the Jags case, like the Colts, who we will talk about very soon. In the Saints case, which, by the way, I don't know for sure if Derek Carr is coming back. I just know it's either going to be this week or next week. If they got Rattler, and then who was their backup last week? Beamer, whatever the fuck his name was. Raymer, I don't know what the fuck his name
Benz,
was.
or Bentley.
Whoever the fuck he was. If he's starting or if Rattler's starting and they get off to, they could win. But if they don't, come on, we know what it is. The season's over. Jets and Dolphins, I was all over the Dolphins this past week. They were one of my picks I thought for sure was going to win, especially with how up and down Arizona's been. Couldn't get it done.
Yeah.
And they're facing Buffalo this week. In Buffalo, it looks to be over for the Dolphins. Unless they can pull out the game of their season at Buffalo, then okay. In the Jets case, they play tomorrow night. The vibes are shit. We know that. We know what the vibes is. But, the Texans not coming in on their best foot, right? They just lost Stephon Diggs for the season. They're without Nico Collins. The offense didn't look great. Funny enough for the Jets, we thought the unit that we could count on was the defense. That's been the weakest unit thus far. That's what, allowed the late touchdown to the Patriots. That's who allowed Jacoby Brissett to put together a crazy drive to even get in that position. I do want to throw this stat out for the Jets. This is hilarious to me. If you've listened to this podcast, you know how I feel about the Jets, being a diehard Patriots fan. Keenan, we were just talking about Keenan and Tim. We were just talking about the Red Sox coming back from 03 and 04 and 2004, excuse me, winning the World Series. That was known as the curse of the Bambino. The Chicago Cubs, they won it was 2016, correct? And I believe their curse was called the curse of the Billy Goat. I can't believe from what I've heard, this has never been said. So if you hear this going forward, please at me, please CC me, because the Jets, what they've been going through, it should be the Belichick curse. I mean, if you know the story, Belichick resigned as head coach of the Jets the day he was hired. He wrote it on a napkin. I resign as the HC of the NYJ. Classic. I hope that's in the NFL Hall of Fame somewhere, Pro Football Hall of Fame. So it's the Belichick curse. Look no further than this stat, okay? If you score 20 plus points, committed no turnovers, and held your opponents to less than 250 yards, I want each of you to guess, what do you think the record is? If you scored more than 20
Jets
points.
record over this year?
This is all
or
NFL teams ever. You scored over 20
NFL
points,
teams.
committed no turnovers, and you held your opponent to less than 250 yards. What do you think the record is lifetime?
I don't know what the record would be because games wise, I'll give you a percentage. I think teams went at it like an 87% clip.
Okay, Tim.
I did see this stat, so I don't know the exact number, but I know what you're getting at. So if you want to just go ahead and say it, that's cool.
I would say about an 87% clip teams went at.
Keenan, that's a great guess. That's a great guess. Before this past Sunday,
really good guess.
Before this past Sunday, Keenan, actually the record was 756-0. No team had given up a loss until the New York Jets lost to the Patriots without Drake May. Coming off a week where everyone thought, hey, get Mayo out of here. 756-0. You can't tell me there's not a Belichick curse. The Jets have been a joke literally the entire time that Belichick was a part of the Patriots and so forth, as we see this year. I personally, we'll be able to talk about the Jets for many weeks ahead. I personally think this ends with them missing the playoffs, clearly, with Aaron Rodgers asking for a trade in the offseason. I think he goes somewhere else.
Trade, not retiring.
Why retire? He's still good. He's still good. You can't tell me if you put Aaron Rodgers on, say, the Dallas Cowboys, right? Or let's say even Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns, they're a well-rounded team. You can't tell me they wouldn't do well with Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Aaron Rodgers has been any part of the problem aside from, being the LeBron James of the locker room, being the LeBron James of the organization. Other than that, his plays been okay because he hasn't had the most time behind that offensive line. But when he's had time, I think he's been more than okay. I think he's looked good. Even in Sunday's game, I thought he looked okay. The defense, however, has not. I think the defense has been a large part of the problem, but that goes with firing your coach and then having your new interim head coach be the DC as well as the head coach. And we don't even know if he's equipped to be a head coach type thing. So that's just the Jets, though. We know how they are. They thrive in just mediocrity and just drama. So that's just the Jets. Let's move on to the next tier. This is the doer.
Pause. I just want to say one thing real quick.
Sure.
Speaking of New York, Juan Carlos Stanton went yard. It's 5-0.
5-0. Wow. Looks like we're going to have a game 6.
I'm going to give random little updates as the game goes on, just in case something big happens. Sure. But speaking of the New York,
and game 6 would be Friday too. Game 6 would be Friday. Yeah. So yeah, that would be cool. Friday night. Do or die. Right, if you remember correctly, and if you have the list in front of you from weeks 4 and 5, I would sometimes put teams in 2 different tiers because I thought they belonged.
Yes.
So I could also put the Browns in this tier. Many of these teams, or a couple of these teams, actually were in shape up or ship out from last tier list.
Yep.
So in do or die, and this is kind of over the course of a few games. It doesn't have to be one game like the teams from the prior tier, where I think if they lose this Sunday, it's all over for them. Do or die. I think these teams, just got to get it together. They at least got to win 2 in a row. They at least got to give something promising. In one of these, or actually 2 of these teams' cases, their injuries they need to win in spite of. Okay, so I got the
Yeah.
Bengals, I got the Cowboys, I got the Seattle Seahawks, and I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this list, in this tier, I should say. Seahawks and Bucks are there because of injury. Seahawks obviously lost DK Metcalf, sorry. This past week looked terrible. They just looked inexperienced in their game against the Bills.
Defensively, they haven't been as good as I thought they were going to be. Like, they have the pieces defensively,
It's been
but
in
they haven't
spurts.
fully clicked yet.
It's been in spurts.
It has been in spurts. Like, you'll see them and you're like, oh, that looks like the defense I thought. And then other spurts, you're like, that doesn't really look like what I thought I was going to see from them. So I like this and them in this tier. Go on.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, I think all four of these teams, minus the Cowboys personally, I actually originally had the Cowboys in their own tier, but the Bengals, Seahawks, and Bucks, I think for sure we at least all had at one point or another the Seahawks and Bucks as someone who could play spoiler in the playoffs. Like, I think the Seahawks started 3-0. They had an easy schedule. Now, again, their defense doesn't look great. DK's banged up, and they just looked sloppy against the Bills. You know, I think they're a good bad team. They can beat up on the bad teams. They're not necessarily going to do anything against the good teams, which I thought they could at one point, but it just doesn't look the case right now. Same for the Bucks. Now they're banged up. It's going to be a rough go. Luckily, as we mentioned with the Saints, they've got the Saints and Panthers behind them. Still got some games against them, but I don't think they're going to catch Atlanta. But they still need to win a few games here, string some wins together just to get into the playoffs. I think it could get ugly for them. And same with the Bengals, as we saw. That was a do-or-die game for them against the Eagles. They get ran on against the Eagles. Eagles did whatever they wanted to them. And Cowboys, we can talk to them at length further on. I think they're the same thing. I think they're going to, like against Atlanta, I think they could be okay because they don't have a strong defense. But against most of the upper tier teams, I'm always going to pick against the Cowboys just because they're not a physical team. Tim, go ahead and react.
I'm a little surprised because as soon as you said this tier, I typed a team and it wasn't in here. So I'm intrigued to see. I'm assuming they're in the very next tier, but like you said, you can kind of put them in two tiers.
I actually think I know what team you typed in.
I bet you do. I mean, especially based on your tiers from last episode that we did the tiers. But I don't mind this list at all. I mean, they're all teams that definitely, like you said, they need to string together a couple wins here to get back into this. I still think I'm confident in the Bengals out of all these teams to do it, but
they've got the schedule.
I don't really know if I'm confident. Yeah, they really do. And I don't know if I'm confident in any of these teams to really do this. Yeah, it is really just the injuries with the Seahawks and the Bucks, and then Dak Prescott with the Cowboys, and the defense hasn't looked up to par. And I get it; they've been missing Micah and Lawrence. That's tough, but you'd hope that they could at least get a win without those guys, and that hasn't been the case. So,
yeah, I mean, I think as far as the Cowboys go, I think Sunday's the game for them because, you know, the Falcons, they aren't too physical either. So we should get a shootout on Sunday between those two teams. Seahawks, they're still kind of in it. They just got to weather the storm without DK. And the Bucks, again, with the Saints and Panthers being behind them and them still having games against them, they should be able to steal games while Mike Evans, Godwin's obviously gone for the season, but Evans, he's going to be gone for what, another 3 weeks?
Evans gone probably week 10. They're talking. I remember
they said they're targeting after the bye week. So.
Okay, so as long as they and the Seahawks don't go winless in the times they're out without their star receiver, they should be okay. Cowboys, same thing. As long as they don't go on a losing streak, they should be okay. Same with the Bengals, but hey, the Bengals have not a single remnant of physicality on their defense. You can do whatever you want to them on defense. Very disappointing team. Very disappointing team. Tim, I am curious, what's the team you typed in that you thought would be in this tier?
Keenan, would you like to guess?
It's one of. I now looked at another team. It's one of two.
I think it's two teams.
I thought it was going to be the Cardinals or the Colts. I'm going to go with the Cardinals.
I thought
neither of those. I had
Really?
the Los Angeles Rams.
I was going to say either the Colts or the Rams. So you are correct. Rams are on this next tier. They're healthy enough. What's their record exactly right now? They're 2-6,
3-5.
They got 3. They did get to 3.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, because they got the Niners win.
Week. But I don't know if you're going on to the next tier, because I'll quickly say something about this one, and then we can move on to the next one.
Sure.
Tampa, I think that they could sneak into a wild card spot. You're right. They do have games against the 2 worst teams in the division, so I think that they could sneak that out. And they showed me a lot when they were really playing with Atlanta and early on in the game. Baker threw a couple picks late trying to force the situation, but they were still playing inspired football. They have a 3-headed monster in the backfield with Tucker, who actually looks pretty solid. Obviously, Bucky Irving's almost taking the starting job there, and Rachaad White. So they have enough until Mike Evans gets back to maybe sneak out something. And then Seattle, really just all depends if they can truly get healthy and then find their dynamic offensively and defensively. I think defensively is a little bit more of the question right now for me. Offensively, I think they'll find it. Dallas, I didn't have too much faith in before the season, and I don't fully now because they have a first-place schedule, and I don't think they're a first-place caliber team. And then Cincinnati, to me, their season truly comes down to next week. I mean, they have to win this week. They have to win this week. It's a mandatory win this week. They don't win this week, you can just call them goodbye. They can be honestly in the season's over tier. Against the Raiders, you don't win that, you're in the season's over tier. I don't care where you are. But their game against the Ravens next week, if they beat the Ravens next week and they get to 5-5, I believe it's it's next week, Thursday night. So if they beat the Ravens and get to 5-5,
same exact game, damn near.
Yeah, where Burrow got
injured.
Yeah. If they beat the Ravens in Baltimore, faith is restored for me because that puts them at 500. They just beat a very good team.
Faith is restored.
And you can move forward. Like, faith is restored in the sense that they can truly make the playoffs. It's been wavering, just like playoffs where they dug themselves such a hole. If they lose to the Ravens, their season's pretty much over. They would be on their last leg tier, and they'd stay in that last leg tier until the playoffs, pretty much. Sure. Like, they would just stay, like, they were really in the last leg. But, yeah, I like the tier. I think that you pretty much nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm weary of the Bucs because they faced what seems to be a JV defense in the Atlanta Falcons. Seahawks, they were like...
They played the Chiefs on Monday, so that's going to be probably a loss.
Sure.
So that's a little tough.
Seahawks, if you watch the game, they were driving on the Bills. Like, they had their chances in the red zone. They fucked it up. I think Geno slipped on one of them. They had a couple key turnovers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cowboys, Keenan, you say you're like, I had no confidence in the Cowboys before the season. I'm still stumped as why you picked them in that Week 3 game to end the season for the Baltimore Ravens. That's
because I wasn't sure about the Baltimore Ravens. They were coming off a terrible loss, and I was like, I don't know. But it's still the Cowboys. Baltimore Ravens is around. Yeah, no, I know. I know it was the Cowboys. I thought them at home would be okay, and they got ran over and proved my preseason take of fine. I had them, I think, 8-9 or 9-8, and not making the playoffs, where they're like just your average Jason Garrett level Cowboys team is what I felt like this team was going to be. And yeah.
All right, my next tier.
Anyways, we can slide on.
My next tier.
Yep.
These are the teams you do not want to play as you're trying to make a run for the playoffs, as like the teams below this tier, if you're trying to make it back into the playoff picture. These, to me, are the teams you do not want to play. You do not want to face on a week-to-week basis. I got the Los Angeles Chargers. I got the Chicago Bears. I got the Atlanta Falcons. I got the Arizona Cardinals. I got the Joe Flacco-led Indianapolis Colts. I got the Cleveland Browns at 2-6. I got the Denver Broncos. And I got the Los Angeles Rams.
So you have the Denver Broncos in... I'm sorry, not Denver. You have the Cleveland Browns in 2?
I have the Cleveland Browns. They are, I think, on this tier list, I have to look.
They're in last leg.
I think they're the only one in 2+ tiers. I could put them in the last leg, but they're really a team you don't want to play. They were in last leg. Do you want them? I mean, I don't have them. Leg? Oh yeah, no, yeah, I got them in last leg for sure. Yeah, keep them in last leg. I almost put them in do or die, but that would be redundant. But I got them, and you don't want to play them because they've just got all the talent in the world, whether it's receiver, whether it's running back.
You don't want to play them is the name of the tier?
Yeah, you don't want to face these teams. as the season goes on. And this stretch between week 8 to week 12, especially to week 16, when you're really trying to make that push, or like I said, if you're really trying to get back, if you're a team like the Jets, if you're a team like the Jags, if you're a team like the Bengals, Cowboys, you do not want to face a team like the Chargers, a team like the Bears, a team like the Atlanta Falcons, Cardinals, Colts, Browns, Broncos, Rams. Quickly, Chargers basically look like the same team from the early season, other than them giving more freedom to Justin Herbert. It seems like he's running more, he's throwing down the field more. Bears, I mean, we saw it. They were, a Hail Mary away from being, only a 2-loss team. Now they got 3 losses in a stacked division. So, we don't really know if playoffs are a factor for them, but we do know between that defense, between the weapons they have on offense, and possibly a good Caleb Williams game, that's a team you don't want to play. Cardinals, I mean, we talked about it. You don't know what you're getting from them, but they seem to be tough. They seem to actually be coming into form now as we're getting into the second half of the season. Falcons, they got a loaded offense, as we've seen. They're just firing on all cylinders on offense. Colts now are especially dangerous with Joe Flacco. I think if you play Joe Flacco in this Texans game this past Sunday, honestly think they win that game. Bizarre game. You had Anthony Richardson subbing himself out. A defense that looked like shit the first 4 weeks of the year that's kind of rounded into form here. So I do like this Colts team, especially with Flacco going forward. Broncos, they're just a tough team. They're really kind of like Temu Steelers, right? Temu Chargers, even with Bo Nix protecting the ball. They got a way better defense than any of us expected. And the Rams are healthy. They still got Stafford. They got Kupp. They got a young defense. Puka's back, obviously. We saw what it looked like.
Big game this week.
What's that?
They play the Seahawks this week.
Seahawks this week.
Big game this week.
That was part of the reason why Seahawks were in do or die as well. I believe they got Rams, Niners, and Cardinals in order. Like they got 3 divisional games back to back to back, I believe. And then again, the Browns, even at 2-6, they're just such a loaded team. And I believe if you would have played Jameis early on in the season, your record's better than a 2-win team. So yeah, that's a team, even if they're out of the playoff picture, I think they're going to give it their all. They're going to play spoiler even if they lose this week and they're out of the playoff picture type thing. But they very well could beat the Chargers. We'll get to that when we do our picks whenever, but react to this tier.
Timmy, you go, or then I'll chime in.
I like a lot of the teams being in this tier specifically. I think this tier could literally be a team from any tier, and that's like
for sure
what's good about this tier.
For sure.
The Browns being in they're in last legs, but then they're jumping up 2 tiers, and like you say, it's not a power ranking, but like this tier, of course you don't want to play the Browns. They do have a defense that if it comes alive, they could hold you to 10 points, and that's pretty hard to win a game when that's the case. The thing with the Browns though is I do agree if Jameis was playing, I think their record's probably a little bit better, not a whole lot better. Jameis is probably going to win them some games, just like last week he did.
Mm-hmm.
Jameis is 100% going to lose them some games, and I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready to see it. It's going to be fun because the highs and the lows are so drastically different with Jameis. So, the Colts are the confusing team to me because, like you said, with Flacco, they pose a bigger threat. If they're starting Richardson, what tier would you throw him in?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Tim,
So
I do just want to say you're kind of cutting out in this one as well as your last response, but your last response was cutting out for a split second, so we were able to react. We still get the gist of what you're saying here, but you've been cutting out for close to 2 seconds. So we're getting most of what you say, but not all of what you say.
But that's
Gotcha.
perfectly fine because everyone else will get it. But on the response, we might be a little bit delayed just for half a second.
So we know you're
I hear ya.
You're iffy on Flacco and the Colts. We got that.
And then there was basically the Browns. You're interested to see what's going on with the Browns and Jameis now that they have Jameis because the defense can hold teams to 10 and the offense can be interesting. Essentially, is what
I pretty much was echoing what Kyle said. Jameis is going to win them games, but he's going to lose them games too.
Yeah,
for sure.
I don't know if I'm still cutting out, but
no, you're
clear.
perfectly fine. For the most part, it was just weird little spurts.
gotcha.
But
My question though
go on.
to Kyle is, if Anthony Richardson is starting quarterback for the Colts, what tier do you throw them in now?
You cut out, but I believe I get
lost.
what you're saying. If Anthony Richardson was the quarterback, where would I have these guys? Like, what tier would I have them? I would probably have them in do or die or last legs. I mean, Shane Steichen, who I think is a good coach, who I think is a smart coach, they pulled one of the dumbest things I've seen since the Bills pulled their shit against the Texans. The Texans happen to be the beneficiary of both of these decisions. So right before the half, I don't know if you guys saw this. I think they had it for sure inside the 20. It might have even been inside the 10, the Colts, inside their own 10. All right. And it was second down, second and 10. Anthony Richardson drops back to pass, nearly throws a pick six. Mind you, there's 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds left inside their own red zone. I say, okay, they got lucky there. Run the ball, run the timeout, and just go into halftime. 10-10 tie in a divisional game. Instead, Steichen lets him drop back. He throws a pass. He gets it picked. Texans end up scoring a touchdown before half. They go up 7. Colts end up losing by 3. That very well could have been the difference in the game if they would have just kneeled that. So it's stuff like that where Richardson he doesn't have it yet, which he's a project QB. So I definitely would have had them a tier lower without Anthony Richardson. I do think if Flacco can stay healthy, if they can keep him upright, they should be okay. They should be able to win some games. Who they got this Sunday?
Give me 2 seconds.
I know it's a 50-50 game.
This Sunday I have the Vikings.
Vikings, that's right.
Vikings on Sunday night.
Okay, all right. That could very well be. I mean, we might get part 2 of what we got last year with the Browns, with Flacco. And honestly, that's what I'm expecting. So long as they can keep him upright. I mean, they've got a good receiving core. We know they got a good running game. Flacco is stable. Weirdly, Keenan, you'll fucking remember this, and Tim, you too. I mean, but like, he was kind of turnover prone with the Ravens, but for the most part, like a good upper tier QB, right? But towards the end with the Ravens, as they merged into the Lamar era, and when he went to the Eagles and I think the Jets after, he just looked like an old, washed up guy who threw bad picks. He couldn't move in the pocket. He's way less turnover prone now. Like, he protects the ball. Like, he looks like a better QB than his post-Ravens stint, which fucking bugs me out. But you could say that for QBs like Jameis, like Geno. So for whatever reason, certain QBs from the last era, this era seems to be like more easy for them. I mean, we've talked about it with Tom Brady. We feel like Tom Brady could definitely still be, I don't know about an elite quarterback, but an upper tier quarterback, top 15, top 10, right? So for whatever reason, these pocket QBs, these older QBs are able to succeed. And yeah, no, I definitely think there's a huge difference between the Colts with Joe Flacco and with Anthony Richardson.
I would personally have the Colts in the do or die. I get why you have Cleveland there. I don't know if I'd have them here. And the rest of the teams I completely agree with. The only really thing.
Why wouldn't you have?
One thing I did want to.
Why wouldn't you have Cleveland?
Hold on, I'll get into that in just a second. There's one thing I really wanted to say about Anthony Richardson.
Sure.
Anthony Richardson reminds me of about a 9-year-old playing Madden. It is just scramble, doesn't know what he's really doing on the field decision-making wise. He's going to throw bombs. He'll complete a few. He'll get a touchdown. Aaron throws. Like, he's just like, at one point, I think his stat line was like 4 of 12 for like 120 something and a touchdown and a pick. I was like, that's just a 9-year-old playing Madden. Like, I'm just going to take the fast quarterback run, chuck it down the field. Some will work, some won't. I'll run if need be. Like, that's what he reminds me of on the field. I had to say that because that's what I was saying, all I could think about. But Cleveland, it's just... Cleveland, I don't like. Depends on Nick Chubb. If Nick Chubb can come back to full Nick Chubb health, then I think he would not want to play this team. Right now, obviously he's rehabbing from a major injury and he's coming back, so he doesn't have the same explosion. And when
And when he's not running well, I don't know if this team has all of the punch. The division game and a trap game with the Ravens made sense, and every division game makes more sense. But I want to see it because they definitely could fall in this tier. I just think that it comes down to Nick Chubb and his health. That's really the only thing. The defense hasn't been as good as it was last year, but again, they still have Myles Garrett. When you have Myles Garrett, you have
My response to that for the Browns would be, even with Deshaun Watson, he was playing historically bad. They were still in most of the games they played. I think maybe it was the Raiders that blew them out early in the season. I can't remember. My memory's kind of fuzzy when it comes to that. But they got other than one game, I think they were in every single game, even despite Deshaun Watson having a historically bad third down rate, this and that. And then I would couple that with the defense being not as good because they were on the field so much. You know, they didn't have extended time to rest because there wasn't any long drives being put together. It was, 3 and out.
They got beat down by the Cowboys and they got beat down by the Commanders.
Okay.
And that was pretty much that. The Raiders played them close. They beat the Jags. Giants played them close, or they played the Giants close, I should say. Played the Eagles close. Played the Bengals close, and then obviously beat the Ravens. So they have been definitely. I don't want to try to make it sound like this is a bad team by any means. It's not a bad team. I don't think they're bad. It's just I think that Nick Chubb adds the scariness, like the really you don't want to face them. I would probably have them. I agree. I get why they're in the last leg because of record, but I think the double for me would be do or die, not this one. But I also I don't hate it.
And the
like
reason why I have
the
them
worst
and don't
things
want
I've
to play them really is mostly their defense, because I think their defense is going to have time to rest, is going to have more time to really, be able to load up and just be fresher, because you're going to have drives that go longer than 3 to 6 plays. I am surprised to hear that you'd have the Colts in the do or die. Colts are and don't want to play them, A, again, as we mentioned, because of Flacco. And B, because the Texans really do have losable games and they're not healthy. I mean, they are extremely lucky to have the record that they have right now on top of their health. And they've got, I think they got the Niners. They for sure have the Chiefs. Like they've got some, I think they have they played the Bills, but they have other number 1 seeded type teams in the division. They just got losable games coming up. And I do think the Colts, I want to say can catch them.
They got
can
the
put
Lions,
pressure on them.
the Cowboys, the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Ravens. A few games they have left that are pretty tough ones.
For sure. Next tier.
Yep.
All right, we got technically contenders. Keenan, can you read off who I had in that tier last time, or either one of you if you got it up?
You had the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Houston Texans, the Minnesota Vikings, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Seattle Seahawks.
All right, this tier is going to look a little different. I just talked about this team. I just mentioned this team. I got the Texans. I'll talk about them in a sec. So I got the Texans, I got the Minnesota Vikings, I got the San Francisco 49ers, and I got the Philadelphia Eagles in this tier for right now. And the toughest...
You said you got the Texans, the 49ers, the Eagles, and what other team?
Vikings. And the toughest to really try to tier out of this group was the Texans, because as we were talking about last week, their offense is nowhere near stats-wise, production-wise, as their personnel. Like they've got an offense I think most teams would like, and they just don't produce. They find themselves in third and long a lot. Not really as fun to watch as they should be. So they were hard for me because, they're technically contenders, but they're also banged up, as we said. But their record would say, these guys are contenders. But I don't necessarily think they're true contenders like the teams I have ahead of them. And I don't even think they're as good as the 3 teams I have with them in this group right now, being the Vikings, being the Niners, and the Eagles. Niners are kind of difficult too, I would say, because they're kind of hanging on by a thread. Every team is live in that division. Cardinals, Rams, and Seahawks are live to take that division from them. But you saw, not only in this last game against the Cowboys, but other games this season, when they want to put it on you, when they want to put it together, they don't even need all their guys to be healthy to do that. So you can't take the Niners lightly. So for right now, they're a team that could definitely move down, could move up by the next time I do this. I got the Niners in this tier. And then the Eagles, they've showed me something the last few weeks. Vikings have kind of remained the same. They've had some losses. They're kind of always going to be the Sam Darnold factor, but also the fact that they built up those wins. They banked up 5 wins. Now let's really see what they can do as they face more divisional opponents, as they face tough opponents. So I still got them in technically contenders, but did not feel all the way confident in putting them in the true contenders tier.
Okay, Timmy, you go.
I think in this tier, I think I have the Eagles highest. I really like what I've seen these last 2 weeks specifically. Pretty much since the bye, the Browns played them well, but Deshaun in that game looked like he almost could have come back to form, low key. Like that was his best Browns game for the season. Totally agree with what you said on the Texans. You know, they haven't really lived up to that expectation, and they're catching a really bad spot right now. They lose Diggs. They don't have Nico. They're in such a tough spot. I think they could slip. They could lose 2 or 3 games straight, and then at that point, they're completely out of this technically contenders tier because they're hanging on by a thread. So, totally agree. The Niners, I'm optimistic because CMC's coming back. Hopefully, they're saying after the bye week that they're trying to open him up and get him in here. If that's the case, it could totally change the offense. Maybe it reverts them back. I know they're down Ayuk still, but I do have faith in them to still roll. The Vikings, I think their defense just needs to tighten up. They were playing really well at the beginning of the season, but this last month, they've been getting just abused through the air. And the Rams really showed that. 4 touchdowns from Stafford. First half looked like they couldn't stop them at all. So if Flores can tighten up the defense, I can be higher on the Vikings. But
okay, for me, I like all of these teams in this tier. The 49ers for sure because they're interesting. They obviously have the talent. But at the same time, they don't have – it'll be different when Christian McCaffrey comes back, you believe. And once he comes back, let's just make sure you don't dig yourself too much of a hole. I mean, they're 4-4, not that they've dug themselves a hole, really. But you don't want to get too low in these division games that you have coming up. You got the Seahawks soon. You don't want to get into the hole where they have the tiebreakers, especially because this division is going to be tight. The Vikings, obviously, they're no longer undefeated, so they're starting to dial it back. The Eagles have found their stride, and that's because Jalen Hurts has found his stride. Jalen Hurts over the last 3 games has looked like the quarterback that was in the MVP running that took them to the Super Bowl, that was playing at that level, not the quarterback post that, who has actually been playing high turnover football and all that good stuff. So I think that the Eagles definitely deserve to be here, and they could be higher. And the Texans, I would have them higher if they weren't as injured as they are. I think that, but I do understand exactly why you have them there because as a team that is, I believe 5-2, 5-3, something like that. I can look here in just a sec. 6-2. As a team that is 6-2, they don't fully look like a well-oiled 6-2. Like the Buffalo Bills look like a well-oiled 6-2. They make sense. Like everything that they're doing looks good over there in Buffalo. Obviously, they just got Amari Cooper. They got somebody else, too, as a wide receiver, if I'm thinking correctly. I feel like they picked up someone. I could be wrong. But anyways, I like the tier. I think that the tier makes sense. I don't know why I thought they picked up somebody.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I said, Texans were hardest to group because I feel like they're the most fraudulent team out of, like, the contenders. I really do. But I really don't. There's not many teams I would put in a fraud tier necessarily, especially teams I have ahead of them. And then the Eagles. I mean, I mentioned it last week. Their season completely changed when Nick Sirianni became Heisenberg. So, I mean, they might just go on an undefeated streak since the shaved head. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, they look physical like they used to. Hurts, naturally, he looks better with Devontae Smith and with A.J. Brown being back. So naturally, he is going to look better. They've turned back into a ball control offense. They've just been much more physical. And most importantly, the defenses look much better since coming back from the bye. So They're definitely, I mean, like Tim said he'd have them ranked first out of these teams. They're definitely a team by, the time I do this after November who could be in the true contenders tier. Absolutely. They look like they're trending that way. We shall see. Niners, I did not know that CMC possibly was coming back after the bye. This being their bye week. I would almost keep CMC out till like after Thanksgiving and just have him for that stretch, because double Achilles injury, that scares me. But if he really is coming back that soon and he's going to be on a pitch count, much like Nick Chubb, you might be okay, especially if you got Jordan Mason coming back. I know he was injured in the last game. Not sure of his status, but, if anyone could weather that type of storm and have him on a pitch count, it's the Niners. So any other comments, any other questions when it regards the technically contenders tier?
No, I like that. I like everything that you have personally.
I got one thing on the Texans. I was just looking at them when Keenan asked about their record. So they are 6-2. Do you know their point differential? How many more points do you think they've scored than let up?
It's like single digits. I think going into this past week, it was like 6 points.
It's 9 points.
Yeah.
They're a 6-2 team that has won 6 games by a combined 9 points.
Yeah.
Or at least in the losses, right? It evens out. But that's something you don't like to see. Even the Chiefs, we say that the Chiefs aren't necessarily as strong a team as they look on paper. They're 7-0, we get it. They have a 60 or 50 point differential. They're at least winning by bigger margins. So I am definitely worried about the Texans most of this tier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say they're really the only team with confidence that I could call a fraud that would be in either contender category as of right now. And that doesn't really, I think I mentioned this week, it doesn't really have to do with CJ Stroud as much as it does their coaching, what it's been. Really their offensive game planning. And their defense has been kind of hit or miss. It depends on the QB they play. But they have let teams back into games. They were dying to lose not only that Bills game, but again, this past week against the Colts. I truly think if Flacco plays that game, Colts could have won that game by a touchdown. But we will move on to the contenders. This tier, I think I only had 4 teams in here last time. I've got the Bills and the Ravens, no surprise. I've got the Lions and the Packers, which if you guys wanted to argue that I could have the Packers down a tier, I could see that. But, hey, they still won this past week with Malik Willis coming in relief against Timmy's Jaguars, against Brandon Petty's Jaguars. But new to this tier, I added, I think I moved the Packers up. I think the Packers weren't technically contenders last time, but either way, new to this tier, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers and I've got the Washington Commanders. React.
Mm-hmm. One thing I'm going to quickly just say, I think I'd have Green Bay with the technically contenders, because Green Bay truly kind of feels like Houston in a different way. They feel like Houston in the sense of they haven't fully played up to their potential, but like offensively, they're just either a turnover or a touchdown. Jordan Love, throw the ball over the yard. He's gonna either he's gonna maybe throw you one, but he's gonna have fun with it. But the reason why I understand why you would have them there is they feel like they have more of an identity and they don't feel like a letdown in a sense. Like they feel like they're producing at what they should do. They just happen to be a little bit turnover prone. So I do understand why you have them there. I'm interested to see, is the next tier the Chiefs or is there another tier? I think the next tier must be the Chiefs, right?
Yeah, that's all the teams. Chiefs are the final tier.
Okay, I'm just making sure. So I personally would have Baltimore and Detroit above the rest of these teams in their own tier.
Not the Bills.
And then I would go from not the Bills. I think that Baltimore is a step ahead, like a small step, but a little step ahead of the Bills. And I think Detroit is the second best team in football right now. The Chiefs are 1. They're 7-0. I understand like they haven't looked the best, but the Chiefs are 7-0. They've got a great defense, great special teams. Obviously, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. They stay 1. 2, I would have their biggest contender to me right now is the Detroit Lions. I love everything about what Detroit's doing right now. Only thing that really sucks for them is Aiden Hutchinson's out. I also want to say, the sidebar,
Shohei Ohtani struck out with bases loaded,
Ooh.
1 down, but the Dodgers are making a run at it. They just scored. Freddie Freeman just had a 2-run single, so he just tied the record for most RBIs in a World Series with 12. It is 5-3.
I will add to that
Mookie
update.
Bet,
I will add to that update and say
a couple errors in this inning.
Interesting. I will add to that update and say the Celtics, who I believe were down double digits with 2 minutes left, came back and forced overtime with the Pacers, and it's 132 with 36 seconds left in OT. So big time comeback.
Yeah, I have both of those games up right now, and I'm bouncing kind of back and forth between them. Because I definitely did see that. But yeah, I'd have Baltimore and Detroit ahead of the rest of this. I would have in the true contenders Buffalo, Washington, Green Bay, and I know Timmy's going to talk about Pittsburgh being the true contenders and probably should be in technically contenders. I think that's just a foreshadow and a guess, but I'm fine with the Pittsburgh Steelers now being in the true contenders, and I love what the Commanders are doing. So,
my response to that would be if I could split these 6 teams into 2 tiers, like into 2 mini tiers, I would have the Bills along with the Ravens and Lions where you have them, and then the Packers, Steelers, and Commanders behind them. I do think the Bills have earned our respect to be in the Ravens and Lions tier, regardless if they're not as explosive as either the Ravens or the Lions. But I do like what they've done with their run defense. They've showed some toughness. They're more physical than I thought they would be on defense. And keep in mind, they'll still have Milano coming back sometime within the next 6 weeks. So that's something to look for. So I would have the Bills and the Ravens. I do agree with you, Keenan. I do think the Ravens and the Lions are a step ahead of the other teams I have in here. But if we're just keeping it at like true contenders who I expect to be either playing on divisional weekend or conference championship weekend, these would be the 6 teams. You could argue that the Commanders is very reactionary to this past week, especially if they would have not got the Hail Mary. But I will say, I thought they, for the most part, outplayed the Bears. Their defense especially impressed me. How physical they were, how they stood up to the Bears. They got key third down stops, especially in the first half. Second half, it felt like their run game, the Bears' run game took over. We could talk about that game more in depth because that was definitely the game of Sunday. But that felt like a playoff game. I was impressed with how the Commanders could match the Bears' physicality. And then as far as the Steelers go, I had them in technically contenders. I think when I said that in the last tier episode, I said, hey, this could be a team that really jumps up if they pile up the wins. I even said in the preseason that I thought this team could go 7-1 and still possibly miss the playoffs because of what their second half looked like, right? As far as their schedule goes. They've taken off in a way I did not expect with Russell Wilson. You could sit there and say, hey, Kyle, they played the fucking Jets and the fucking Giants. What are you talking about? That's fair too. But the fact that they've shown
who's on the schedule, though. You got to play.
That's true. So. And the fact that they've shown some explosiveness, which I did not really think was in them. I thought they could get more explosive without Fields, but they've shown consistent explosiveness without Fields. So that between the Commanders actually showing some heart on defense, showing some physicality, and then the Packers, they are the biggest question mark here, but they continue to win when Jordan Love's out. And Jordan Love did have a couple picks last week. He did injure his groin, I believe, in the first quarter. So he was playing hurt most of that game. So I'll give them a pass. We'll see more this Sunday against the Lions. Cannot wait for that. Hopefully Love plays. And then, the Ravens and the Bills. I mean, we obviously think those are the 2 teams that are the biggest threat to the Chiefs in the AFC. And then, of course, the Lions. Lions, they're going to get a pass rusher to replace Aiden Hutchinson here for the stretch run. Maybe even get Hutchinson back for the Super Bowl or even championship weekend. We'll see. But if they can even get someone just, like the Chiefs just got Uche from the Patriots, which was a steal, I think. They can get someone like that just to kind of spare them. They're going to be fine anyway, but, I mean, you would have to feel even better about them. Tim, go ahead. I've been doing too much talking here.
I agree. Earlier you said if you had to split this into 2 tiers, that's honestly what I think you should have done because the Bills, Lions, and Ravens kind of stand out in this tier. Those other 3 teams, it's just like they don't hold up. at least if you're looking at it head to head, it's really tough. The Steelers have definitely impressed me these last 2 weeks. Since I called them out, they've kind of just done exactly what I said they couldn't do. This week's game, though, if they were really a contender, I think that they probably should have beat the Giants by quite a bit more. The Giants were in this game, and if TJ Watt doesn't get that fumble, that strip sack at the end there, it could have been overtime. It could have been, right there for the losing. And then we have a completely different talk on this. So I agree the Packers probably need to be moved down only because of the reason that I wasn't very high on the Texans in the previous tier. They're hitting like that injuries. If Love misses this week, I think we have to put them down a tier. It's going to be really tough. They play the Lions this week. It's going to be very tough to win that game without Jordan Love. So I think even if we don't take them down now, next week we'll be like, yeah, they're probably down just because they're probably going to lose to the Lions.
I mean, it would be hard for me to remove
I don't
them.
mind it.
Just a quick response to that. It would be hard for me to move them just for, let's say, a spot game where Malik Willis plays for Jordan Love and they lost that game. I would still have them in that same tier. Keep going, though, because I'll ask more about this tier in general. Keep going.
I think if you had made it 2 tiers and just made it like sub-contenders or whatever, not like, in between the technically and the contenders, I'm fine with them being in that tier. I just think I lean a little bit more towards the technically contenders.
Hear that.
Just because we had talked about them on that Fraud Watch segment. They were one of the teams that we had kind of briefly talked about. And even this last week, he was hurt. I totally get it. But it's the Jaguars, man. Like, plenty of bad teams have beat the Jaguars. So definitely should have won. If you were telling me Malik Willis played that whole game, I probably still would have picked the Packers to win that game. So
counter to that,
yeah.
My counter to that would be the Jags actually looked like a tough team a lot of that game.
They kind of did.
Even when they went down, Trevor Lawrence, he brought them. He drove them down. Like, that looked like the Jags, the best version of the Jags team. Only thing was when Malik Willis got the ball back in a tie game, he threw on him. That was the alarming part about it.
They just went right down again.
So, the Jags really did give them their best shot, which is kind of sad to say. But Packers, they're the hardest team arguably in the whole league to evaluate because I feel like they can play with anybody. I don't feel like they're a team that can lose to anybody, especially if you're winning with Malik Willis. 3-0 with Malik Willis or 2.5-0 with Malik Willis. It's still extremely impressive because I think I picked against him in both of the games he started. I definitely felt confident in the Jags winning that game once Malik Willis entered the game, especially with how they were playing on offense. So I can do 2 things, fellas. I could move all 3 of the Packers, Steelers, and Commanders down to technically contenders, which I don't necessarily feel is fair for the Steelers and Packers in general. Can do a quick check. Did I have the Packers and technically contenders or true contenders last time?
You had true contenders. You had the Bills, Ravens, Lions, Packers, 49ers.
So I did have the Packers, and they continued to win. I think they've only got 1 loss since then, possibly.
I think they're 5-3 right now, so yes.
Okay. I get what you're saying. I don't feel great about moving them down. Steelers, I feel like, have improved since then. And the Commanders have showed me a lot in this game. What I could do, and I could move those guys down. How would you guys feel if we made this like the contenders part A, part B type thing with the top 3? Or I could I'll figure it out. We'll figure out a name in the group chat. We'll get it squared away before we get these graphics out. But I do agree with you guys. I do think all 3 of the Bills, Ravens. Keenan said the Ravens and the Lions, but I think the Bills should.
I get. See, the Bills, I think, are better than those. So if you had to put them in one of the 2, I get putting them in the one because I think they're better than the other 3 teams, but I think they're worse than the other 2.
That's fair. They're certainly not as explosive as the Ravens or Lions.
I think they're just like right in the middle of those 2 teams. Like, I'm going to take the Lions and the Ravens over the Bills, but I think I would take them all over the Steelers, the Commanders, and the Packers. Quick note, Pascal Siakam hit a 3. Celtics lose by 3. Wow. The Dodgers tied it up with a 2-run double. It is 5-5 going in to the bottom of the 5th. So Aaron Judge dropped a pretty routine line drive, a shortstop.
Mr. June.
Shortstop, little error. Yeah, I was going to say shortstop, little error, throwing it to third. That kind of allowed runs. And then the first baseman got a ground ball, thought the pitcher was going over, ready to flip it to him, but he didn't. So Mookie got on the base. So a lot of self errors for the Yankees in that inning. They could have got out of it with maybe a run. But we'll see. That's what playoff baseball is about. But I'm kind of looking at your list of teams. I'm kind of looking at your list of teams right now. I don't like the Packers and the Texans feel like similar teams to me. So I think what I would do, honestly, is for right now.
My thing is, we saw them head to head, and Stroud couldn't even throw for 100 yards against them.
Well, the game was close.
It was, but
they played close.
The score was close, but I watched most of that game, and it felt like the Texans were outplayed. They were kind of lucky. I mean, like you said, that was due to Jordan Love picks. If I remember correctly, one of them wasn't necessarily his fault. It was just the Texans have gotten extremely lucky on their schedule in general. Like, I feel the same way about that Packers game, about multiple games with the Texans.
Fair. That's fair. I think this is what I think I would do. Personally, KC at the top. Then the next would be Buffalo, Baltimore, Detroit in their own tier. Then I'd have Green Bay, Washington, Pittsburgh, Houston, Philly in one. And then the 49ers and Vikings in one.
That's fair.
So
I think
that's kind of how I would probably, like, me personally, but I get where
my thing. Okay, here's what I'll do. This is what I'm going to do. Because I think the Texans, Vikings, Niners, and Eagles still should be in the same tier. So what I will do, I'm going to come up with a new name for that category, for that tier. I will make the Commanders, the Steelers, and the Packers in the technically contenders tier. And then the true contenders tier will be the Bills, the Ravens, the Lions.
Yeah, about those things. Yeah. I like it. And then obviously three-peat with the Chiefs.
So maybe I
like it.
Maybe I should call the Texans, Vikings, Niners, Eagles. Well, here's the thing. I would call that Fraud Watch, right? But I almost feel if I call it that, I feel like I should move the Vikings up because I feel like the Vikings are more fundamentally sound than those other three teams at this moment. And you could even make an argument for the Niners, but they got more losses, and they still are, like I said, very much live to lose the division, where I could say the Vikings are very much live to win the NFC North still. I think that'll be a tough task. We'll figure it out. We'll squabble it out in the group chat. So this is what we'll do. Technically contenders is now Packers, Steelers, and the Commanders, and possibly the Vikings. Maybe they'll be in both. Maybe they'll be both in Fraud Watch and technically contenders, since I've made it a Venn diagram type tier list. So maybe we'll do that. We'll discuss more in the group chat before we get these out, or maybe let's iron it out right here. We're gonna do that. We're gonna do Fraud Watch.
Get a name.
We're gonna do Fraud Watch.
So we got
Fraud Watch. Taking it back to Timmy's segment from a few weeks ago. Fraud Watch.
So we got Fraud Watch, and then we got technically contenders, true contenders. I like that more personally.
And then here, I'm gonna split it right now. Boom.
Okay, I wrote it down so I have it here on the list, so I know what to make. But I like it. I like it.
So technically contenders, I got Packers, Steelers, Commanders, and I think I'm gonna move the Vikings up to technically contenders, and then keep Fraud Watch as the Texans, Niners, and Eagles. Is that fair? Or would you rather see the Vikings in Fraud Watch?
It's hard because, like, I think the Vikings are fundamentally sound everywhere. You worry about the quarterback.
I'm going to keep them in Fraud Watch. I'm keeping them in Fraud Watch.
So you're going to keep them in Fraud. I get them in Fraud Watch, so I like that. I like it. I think they're a little bit worse than the Packers right now. Timmy, what do you think? Are you fine with the whole switches that's gone on?
I dig it. I mean, it is really tough. Like, part of me wants to put the Packers down in the fraud watch tier, but like you said, they've been winning games. I don't know. I really don't know. The biggest thing I was thinking was head to head right now, all teams healthy, 49ers versus Packers. Who do I have winning? And I don't think it would be an easy Packers. I really don't. So
I agree with you.
I think they're more in line there.
I agree with you. I mean, if you remember my tier list from preseason, the 4 teams I had in the true contenders was the Lions, was the Ravens, I think the Bills. Actually, sorry, I think it was just the Lions.
I don't think you
Ravens.
had the Bills.
I don't think it was the Bills. I think the Bills weren't technically contenders. I think it was just the Lions, Ravens, and the Niners, the final 4 from last year, including the Chiefs, obviously being in their own tier. So I agree with you. Yeah, fully healthy. If we got Ayuk, if we got McCaffrey, yeah, Niners are probably definitely in true contenders.
To be honest with you, I didn't even mean Ayuk or McCaffrey. I was just saying, like, if Debo's not having this wrist injury and having pneumonia, and Kittle's good, and Purdy's good, and then if Jordan Love's good on the other side, right now, week 10, who wins? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think it would be that easy of a game to pick.
I think it would be a toss-up of a game. Fellas, here's the interesting thing about this, and here's the great thing. As I said a few weeks ago, I forget what we were talking about. I think we were talking about the Steelers, actually. We're going to find out with all these teams. We're going to find out. But the most intriguing thing about November, kind of cool, it's a 5-week November. So September and October were 4 weeks. We will not do this tier until 5 weeks from now. Last thing I would say, this very much felt jumbled in between week 4 and week 5 when I was doing it. Like that's why you had certain teams that went in 2, I think maybe even 3 tiers. And this one, you got a couple teams in 2 tiers, but this one feels much more ironed out because, I mean, that's where we are in the season. We're in week 8 going into week 9. We got a little more clarity. We still got question marks about some of these teams, especially at the top. And guess what? Some of these teams that are in the don't want to play them tier or in the do or die tier, or maybe even the last legs tier, they might work their way up to fraud watch. They might work their way up to technically contenders. So this is the most chaotic part of the season, November, especially coming out of Thanksgiving. Coming out of Thanksgiving, it's going to be fucking insane. Coming out of Thanksgiving, when I do my next tier list, like, who the hell knows what it's going to be? This could look drastically different, especially in the season's over tier. It could be teams that are damn near in contention status that are in season's over. We just don't know. I cannot wait. This is an amazing part of the season. I think since I did this tier, the season's only heated up, and it's only going to continue to heat up. It's only going to continue to be more chaotic, more explosive as far as offense goes, more dramatic. It's the gift that keeps on giving. It's the NFL season. So we're nearing towards the holidays. That's when it heats up. I can't wait. Any other comments, whether it has to do with the NFL, whether it has to do with the MLB, NBA, any comments sports-wise from you guys? And we still got Thursday Night Football.
I was about to say no comments, just Thursday Night Football. Yankees got 2 on, 2 outs. It looks like Torres is on deck. So 2 on, 2 outs, 3-0 count. So the Yankees look like they could be in position to get a couple more runs, which they need after the Dodgers put up a 5 spot in the inning. So Thursday Night Football, we've got Houston heading to New York. And New York's actually favored by 1.5. Threw me off. Figured that Houston would be favored. I'm going to get this out of the way quickly. I've got Houston in this game. I don't think the Jets are great. I think Houston's better, but I do think that it's going to be close because Houston really hasn't shown the ability to blow out teams yet. You're missing Diggs. This is a good spot for the Jets because there is change in Houston and they don't have much time to game plan for it. But I just don't think the Jets are good. I've got the Houston Texans winning this game 24-19.
Tim, what you got?
I'm gonna go a different route here. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but starting with this game, the Texans are about to play 3 games in 10 days. It's gonna be crazy. So this is gonna start bad for them. Short week. I'm taking the Jets here. like Keenan, I don't think they're necessarily a great team, but I think they've caught the Texans at the perfect time with Stephon Diggs out for the season. Nico's still not back. It's down to Tank Dell and Joe Mixon. I think we get a legacy Aaron Rodgers 303 game right here. Give it to me 24.
300?
Yep.
He
Give it to me.
for 333 games or something like that.
He's going to snap it right here, brother. Devontae's going for $120 and a touchdown. I'm calling it right here. 24-16 is my score. That's how I'm taking it.
Okay.
Tim said shit's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
Listen, if you would have asked me last week, like if we would have done our pick show last week, I would have said there's no way. It would be the most Jets thing in the world if the Jets actually lost to the Pats this Sunday. There's no way they're losing to the Pats. They lost to the Pats. Not only did they lose to the Pats, they lost in a situation that 756 teams won in and never lost, and the Jets still lost. I love it. I fucking love
LeVar
it.
Ball never lost.
Never lost. Never fucking lost. So, as I mentioned to you guys, Belichick curse. I believe that's real. You might even be able to call this the Kyle Warner curse, the Castro curse. I picked the Jets to win the division. They're not winning the division. I said I ran into some Jets fans in Nashville who were going to the Jets-Titans games the next day. I gave them the blessing, and I said, I believe your team's going to win the division. We see what's happened. So maybe me, along with Bill Belichick, has cursed this team. I hope that's the case. I hope that I could inflict more pain, suffering, etc. on the New York Jets. But I'm with Tim on this one. I got the Jets winning 23-20 against the Houston Texans. Give them a little more hope.
That's a very Houston Texans score. I feel like they've had 3 games this year that were 23-20. The
Right.
Bills Texans game, pretty sure. The Colts, I swear there was another one where like they're right there. That's exactly what they let up. That's exactly what they scored.
I'm gonna go through their. No, they're 24-20. Tim. They're 29-27 to the Colts, 19-13 to the Bears. Got dog walked by the Vikings, 34-7. 24-20 to the Jags, 23-20 to the Bills, 41-21 Patriots, 22-24 they lost to the Packers, and then 23-20. So that's very on brand.
Games at
all of our scores are on brand, really.
Games at Jets too, right? It's in New York or in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Very different team on the road. That's across these 2 seasons of CJ Stroud too. Very different team on the road. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I've got nothing else. I've been giving baseball updates throughout this whole thing. Shout out to the Yankees. Shout out to the Dodgers. Hopefully the Yankees can pull it out just for the fact that I want a longer series. I'd love a Game 7. But great there. Great basketball. Shout out to Pascal Siakam with the big play to end it for the Celtics in overtime. But unless you guys have anything else that's pressing on your mind, Kyle, good tears again. Glad we hashed out the top of the tiers a little bit, but this has been the Warner Brothas Podcast. We've got Timmy, always thankful to have Timmy. We've got Kyle, of course, one half of the Warner Brothas Podcast. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all Warner Brothas Podcast. Follow us there. We do have NBA predictions. We weren't able to do a show this year, but we do have all the graphics for the NBA predictions. Those will be dropping probably some per every single day or however we end up dropping them, but those will be dropping very soon. I know
we'll have a reaction show to that as well.
But
at some point we will have a reaction.
Yeah, I was gonna say we'll definitely talk about it here at some point, but we have all the graphics ready for that, so those will be coming out soon. So be on the lookout for that. But Warner Brothas Podcast, we appreciate all of you guys, and we'll be back very soon.